In the early months of 2022, as the war in Ukraine intensified, the cities of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk emerged as battlegrounds of immense strategic and symbolic value. Nestled in Ukraine's Luhansk Oblast, these twin cities stood as the last bastions of Ukrainian control in this sector of the Donbas, a region Putin claimed as a central prize in his campaign. What followed was a brutal contest marked by relentless fighting, immense destruction, and a staggering human toll. From March onward, Russian forces launched a fierce offensive intending to encircle and capture Severodonetsk. Ukrainian defenders held tightly, repelling repeated assaults despite being outgunned and outnumbered. The city's streets turned into a deadly maze, every building a battlefield, every block contested with fierce determination. Ukrainian commanders described the battle as fighting for literally every meter of ground. Russian forces initially made slow progress, but resorted to overwhelming artillery bombardments that flattened residential areas and infrastructure alike. By late spring, about 70 to 80% of Severodonetsk had fallen under Russian control, but fierce Ukrainian resistance remained entrenched in key positions like the Azot chemical plant, which became a fortress of last defense. The city was left in ruins, a burnt-out desert with shattered buildings and the echoes of relentless shelling. Ukrainian officials repeatedly stressed that food, medicine, and reinforcements were desperately needed, but increasingly difficult to deliver due to Russian control of surrounding approaches and destroyed bridges. Lysychansk, perched across the river from Severodonetsk, then became Ukraine's final foothold in the region. As Russian troops encircled the city in June, the battle took on the character of a last stand. Ukrainian soldiers took shelter in underground bunkers, oil refineries, and makeshift fortifications, enduring constant shelling through day and night. Civilians sought refuge wherever possible amid a backdrop of destruction and uncertainty. The human cost was staggering. Despite Russian attacks, Ukrainian forces repeatedly stalled advances, defying expectations. However, the pressure was immense. Russian commanders, including figures like General Alexander Dvornikov, pushed relentlessly to cut off critical supply routes and take control. But not without cost. Reports emerged of heavy losses among Russian troops, including elite units and allied forces with less training and support, revealing strains in Moscow's operational capacity. This bloodbath was compounded by Russia's escalating manpower crisis. The Kremlin, struggling to replace casualties, resorted to pulling soldiers from other fronts and even sending penal units and punished recruitment officers to the front lines. Morale among fresh Russian conscripts was reportedly low, with many thrown into battle without adequate preparation or equipment. These measures underscored the grim realities behind Russia's often rosy public declarations of progress. Meanwhile, Ukraine drew strength from international military aid, intelligence sharing, and an indomitable will to resist. The battle was not only about controlling territory, but also shaping narratives, each side vying to demonstrate resilience or inevitability. Ukrainian President Zelensky addressed the hardships, urging the world to recognize the dire humanitarian situation and the courage of the defenders. Yet despite Russia's eventual capture of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk by early July, the victory proved Pyrrhic. The cities were decimated, their populations displaced or devastated. The landscape bore scars of scorched earth tactics, trenches, barriers, minefields, and booby traps planted by retreating defenders to slow further Russian advances. What lay ahead for Russian forces was a gauntlet of fortified defenses and a grinding attritional war that would sap manpower and morale. Strategically, the battle's aftermath reshaped the front lines, but also revealed Moscow's limits. While Putin sought to use territorial gains as leverage for peace talks and to bolster his narrative of success, Ukraine's steadfast defense underscored the challenges Russia faced in sustaining its offensive ambitions. The prolonged fighting drained Russian resources and forced Moscow to rethink its recruitment and deployment strategies, even as it exerted immense pressure on occupied and remote regions to supply troops. The fighting in Severodonetsk and Lysychansk stands as a stark example of the brutal nature of modern urban warfare and the profound costs of geopolitical ambitions. It illuminates the resilience of a nation defending its sovereignty and the heavy toll exacted on soldiers and civilians alike. The battle may have ended, but its legacy continues to shape the wider contest for Ukraine's future. As the fighting in Severodonetsk and Lysychansk dragged into the summer of 2022, the scale of destruction became impossible to ignore. Whole neighborhoods were reduced to rubble, streets littered with the remnants of a once thriving community. The whine of artillery shells, the rattle of machine gun fire, and the distant boom of explosions became the constant soundtrack for civilians trapped in basements and bomb shelters. For many, it was no longer about winning or losing, it was about survival. Ukrainian defenders, though heavily outnumbered and outgunned, showcased remarkable tenacity. They used every tool at their disposal: snipers, improvised explosive devices, and anti-tank guided missiles, many supplied by Western allies, to hold back the tide. The use of drones to spot enemy movements and direct fire added a new dimension to the battle. Ukrainian commanders often referenced the role of these small machines as force multipliers, enabling a smaller force to deliver concentrated strikes that inflicted disproportionate damage on Russian units. On the other side, Russian forces struggled with coordination and morale. Reports from intelligence sources revealed that many conscripts were poorly trained and had little desire to fight. The Kremlin's strategy of continuously feeding fresh troops into the grinder without adequate rest or preparation resulted in escalating casualties and shrinking combat effectiveness. In an attempt to conceal setbacks, officials employed information warfare, broadcasting selective victories and denying losses, while the reality on the ground was far grimmer. The human cost extended beyond the battlefield. Thousands of civilians were forced to flee, becoming part of a growing wave of refugees seeking shelter in safer parts of Ukraine or neighboring countries. For those caught behind the front lines, access to food, water, medical care, and electricity was sporadic or non-existent. Humanitarian organizations struggled to deliver aid amid ongoing hostilities, and reports of civilian casualties sparked international outcry. Politically, the fall of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk marked a turning point. Russia claimed the capture as a significant victory that would facilitate further advances in the Donbas. Moscow's narrative suggested that these wins validated its claims over the region and justified the sacrifices made. However, Ukrainian leaders framed the losses as harrowing but temporary setbacks, emphasizing the resilience of their forces and the inevitability of reclaiming lost territory. Behind the scenes, the battle had wider strategic reverberations. Russia's focus on this front line drained resources from other critical sectors, creating vulnerabilities elsewhere. Ukrainian intelligence noted decreases in Russian troop numbers and equipment availability along less active fronts. This redistribution also opened opportunities for Ukrainian counteroffensives designed to exploit Russian weaknesses and regain the initiative. Internationally, the battle for Severodonetsk and Lysychansk heightened urgency for Western countries to bolster Ukraine's defense capabilities. The provision of advanced weapons systems, intelligence sharing, and logistical support increased significantly as the global community recognized the stakes. Simultaneously, diplomatic efforts to negotiate ceasefires or peace talks faced setbacks, as neither side demonstrated willingness to compromise amidst the intensity of the combat. The battle for Severodonetsk and Lysychansk encapsulates the evolving nature of the Ukraine war, a conflict defined by brutal urban combat, asymmetrical tactics, human suffering, and the clash of geopolitical ambitions. While the city's devastation stands as a stark testament to the horrors of war, the courage and determination of those defending them continue to inspire many. The fight for Donbas did not conclude with their fall. It transformed, setting the stage for continued resistance and the broader struggle for Ukraine's sovereignty.